Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo, president and executive producer of The Peak TV. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers who are winners in their field and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Hey everybody, welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I have an amazing guest here today. We've got Dr. Joseph Roy. He's the superintendent of the Bethlehem Area School District. Dr. Roy, good to have you here.
I'm happy to be here, thank you. Call me Joe.
Oh, please.
So,
okay,
yeah.
Joe. I will call you Joe, gladly.
It's unscripted.
It is unscripted, so we should use your first name.
Correct.
You are a superintendent of a school district, which sounds very big and very daunting to me. Is it a big and daunting job?
It's a big job, but luckily we have lots of great people in the district that make it a manageable and fun job.
Okay. I want to go back and learn a little bit more about you. We'll figure out what the course was that led you to this job that you've got today. Okay. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? What kind of family do you have? Yeah. How many kids? That kind of thing.
Sure. Well, I grew up middle school and high school years in central Pennsylvania, Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. People know it mostly for Bucknell,
right? Yeah. Okay.
People know it either for Bucknell or the maximum security federal penitentiary.
Oh,
that's
right.
there.
well, that's another famous thing to be known for. My husband grew up by the Rawway prison.
Oh,
so something
yeah. So
you both have the name Joe, and you both grew up by federal prisons.
Right,
so that's
yeah.
exciting.
So, yeah, there's two institutions of higher education in Lewisburg, Bucknell and the prison. My middle school and high school years were there. My
pretty
father
rural,
was
though, right? It's
rural,
pretty rural.
Yeah. We like to think
Lewisburg.
Lewisburg's different than the other towns around it because of Bucknell.
But
more
it's still
culture,
pretty rural.
We're in the middle,
Okay.
right? And my father was a high school principal, so he was my high school principal.
Oh,
this
wow.
is a thing that runs in our family.
I was going to say, okay, so it's in the blood.
Yep. And then...
Now, does Lewisburg have one high school?
Yeah.
Okay, so he
it's
is
a
like
small town.
the principal.
Right.
Okay,
At
that's
the
an
time.
important distinction, I think.
Yep.
All right.
And then went to Franklin and Marshall College. Came back to Bucknell for my master's. And in between, I spent part of a semester at law school. Decided that's not what I wanted to do.
That wasn't for you, but you thought for a minute.
Yeah, I'm a law school dropout.
Okay.
No regrets about that. And then came back and got certified to teach, which I'd always thought that was probably where my passion was.
All right. Now, your father's the principal. How many kids are in your family?
I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay, so you're the middle child.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what do you think?
Yeah.
What characteristics of a middle child do you exemplify?
Not sure.
Are you a peacemaker?
I can be a peacemaker, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I, kind
I would
of
imagine
am
that
quieter,
comes into play a lot in
quieter
your job.
one in the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
what about in your childhood? What were early memories? Did you play any sports? What were
yeah.
activities you did?
Yeah, sports were big.
Yeah.
So I played all kinds of sports, but in high school I played football and wrestled. So those are still my favorite sports, wrestling in particular.
Okay.
In the Lehigh Valley, that's a good thing.
Yeah, they're big here. That's right.
Not,
what was it about wrestling? What did you like about it? Now, was your dad a wrestler?
No.
He was not.
No,
So this was a new thing.
What really got me into it was the family down the road had, I don't know, like 5 boys, all who were big wrestlers. And I got into
They're doing
wrestling
it. You
through
might as
that,
well do it too.
If you went into their basement,
Yeah.
you better start to learn how to wrestle.
You better learn.
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you like about it?
So I like a good competition, a good challenge. And in wrestling, it's a team sport, but it's really also, when you're out there by yourself.
Right, you're cheering your teammates on.
They keep a team score.
Ultimately,
but
it's
when
up to you.
you're competing,
Yeah.
it's on you. Yeah.
Okay, what kind of student were you?
So I was a good student.
Mm-hmm. Good behavior, good grades, both?
Reminder, my father was a principal.
Oh, you didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was a good student. And yeah, I like social studies stuff, history stuff. I went on to become a social studies teacher, so that made sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what was it, do you think, about history? I mean,
There might have been a connection.
what's interesting is I have a son and a daughter, and my son is really finding he's into history.
Yeah.
He likes it, and he got the PSAT stuff back, and on it gives you a report of where their aptitude might be, like for AP courses and such. Of course, this is new for me. I know I'm telling you something you are very familiar with. But for me, I was like, oh, they give you all this information.
It's pretty
and
cool,
on it,
actually.
it had world studies and history,
that's
this.
interesting.
And I'm like, well, that's funny. He's into that.
It
So
fits.
what is it about history?
Yeah. Well, there, again, family influence. My father was a social studies history teacher. So I think that was just kind of the stuff we were interested in, family vacations.
Were you going to Gettysburg for a weekend?
Gettysburg,
Okay.
Mount Vernon,
Mhm.
Washington, D.C. a lot, yeah. So that was kind of bred into me.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
good. Well, that's nice for family conversations, things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And now what about your mom?
My mom?
Yeah.
She worked at Bucknell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was a secretary in the Alumni Relations Office at Bucknell,
Okay.
and for many years until she retired.
And what about your
Yeah.
siblings?
I have a younger brother
Yep.
who is in Minnesota, works for a bus company, school bus company, interestingly.
You can't get away
yeah.
from that.
And my sister has always been involved in animal rights organizations and has run animal rights organizations. So she's with I'm not going to remember the name of it, but American Wild Horse organization right now that tries to protect wild horses in the American West, where they
That's
have
incredible.
population control
Sure.
issues. And
I just
so
saw a
they-
huge story about that, as a matter of fact. You know I'm a horse person.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that. Yeah. So
I
you would
have to-
appreciate.
Right,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
interesting.
No,
It's
yeah.
a
So
big
usually, if
issue,
there's a
especially
big
when there
article,
are these
yes,
the fires out west and such, yeah.
and how to protect them, and rather than slaughtering them to control the population, what are other ways they can
Right,
do it?
finding homes, finding
so that's
jobs.
been her. Yeah.
Where did that come from, do you think? I mean, did you have
That's
pets growing up?
Interesting. Yes. I'm not sure where that came from with her, but that pretty
That's
much,
always
other
been her
than right out
passion.
of college, she was on some political, political campaigns and so forth, but mostly her whole career has been with the animal rights.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, now, if you were to describe a typical Sunday in your home as a kid, how would you describe it? What were some things you liked? Did you have a favorite toy, a favorite activity? What was your block like?
Yeah. No block in rural Pennsylvania. You
You were
just
far
go
from
out
your
and you
neighbors.
play field.
Yeah.
Well, we were close, but
Okay.
there was plenty of space. So on a Sunday, it would always be going to church. And then in the fall, it would be everyone gathered in the neighborhood and played football on
That's
the
great.
nearby field. Yeah.
That's amazing. And do
Yeah.
you feel like you had a strong group of friends? I mean, are there people that you grew up with you're still friendly with?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think maybe it was because it was a small high school, but the people that I hung out with are still my closest friends.
That's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Where in your education, so you think you're going to go to law school,
Mhm.
where did that thought come from?
Well, I was a political science major at Franklin and Marshall. Many people there go on to law school. At the time, it was kind of law school or med school. And so I was kind of on that conveyor belt, I guess. And I had doubts about whether that's really what I wanted to do, but that was kind of the path I was on. If I could go back, I would probably spend more time learning about the actual legal profession rather than just thinking, oh, I'll go to law school.
Right.
So I spent a semester, less than a semester at George Washington University, National Law Center. I liked the classes. I liked the academic side of it, but I couldn't find where I could see myself long term as a lawyer.
It's pretty insightful, though, because if you think about it, a lot of people go through the entire process, and
I know
only
many
once
people.
they're practicing do they say, "Oh, shoot, that's not
Yeah.
really what I wanted." So, how
Yeah.
did you realize so early on? And then, actually, I'll go one step further. Not only did you have the realization, how do you go back to your parents with that? I mean, I
Yeah.
have to imagine
Yeah.
there's a personal dynamic
Yeah.
going on too.
Yeah, that was biggie. I guess because I was having some second thoughts before I ever got there, and then once I was there and I was able to do a little more learning about different possibilities of types of types of lawyers, and I kind of concluded, not for me. Most people's reaction was not positive. And I decided I do want to teach. So to say I'm going to go from being a lawyer to a teacher, at least at that time, most people were like, "What are you talking about?" My father had passed away at the end of my freshman year in college, so it was really just a conversation with my mother. She was fine with what I wanted to do.
She wanted to
but
support you.
Other people were like, "What?"
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
people put a lot of,
Yeah.
I guess, stock into
Yeah,
the idea that you'd have that sort of stable financial
Yeah.
career or something like that.
yeah. So
Well,
no regrets though.
Yeah, well,
Never
obviously
looked
it's
back.
worked out pretty well. Yeah, you knew,
Yeah.
and you knew right away. Do you feel like your father passing away had any influence over this decision? I mean, he was clearly important to you and your upbringing.
So what I would say absolutely, because when he passed away, in a small town and you're the high school principal for a decade or so, the outpouring of people and the long lines at the viewing really drove home to me the impact that he had. And so that was something that was always in the back of my mind, that, you know, I unfortunately got to see the true impact on a community.
Terrible that you have to witness it through that loss.
Yes.
But at the same time, incredible that you were able to, I guess, take away from.
It was empowering.
Yeah,
right?
that
absolutely.
His role influenced so many people.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I have to point out that just walking in here today, there is someone who works in this building who is a former student of yours, and she saw you and said, Principal Roy!
Yeah.
And
so
right
the
away
bulk,
was
most of my
excited
time
to
as
see
an
you.
administrator was spent as a principal.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, so now you leave law school, you go back to Bucknell.
Yeah.
And what do you study there?
I needed to just take courses because I had my
degree.
political science degree.
Okay.
So I needed, to take the education courses. So I did that over the course of a year, I guess. And then got a teaching job in Emmaus, which is what first brought me to the Lehigh Valley. So I was just sending out resumes, and back
anywhere,
then you mailed them,
right?
And you had to
Snail
type
mail.
them, right?
Yeah.
And I think I went to I think it was at Kutztown University. I went to a job fair, and I was just given out my resume, and I got a call from Emmaus, East Penn School District. I had to get out a map. I had no idea where it was. I had to get out a map, but it was within an area that I was interested in. And
it is a hike, though. I mean, you know, you're coming from a small rural town, and you're going what, 3.5 hours?
But the thing about growing up in a small town and with friends who go to college, most people don't stay.
Right, they go
So
somewhere.
people were going. It was like not unusual to go somewhere.
Was there anywhere you wouldn't go? I mean, you were looking. I guess you were certified to teach in Pennsylvania, correct? Or is that
correct? Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But I was looking down that way.
Okay.
And
you get your first teaching job in Emmaus.
My first teaching job in Emmaus.
And what are you teaching?
Social stuff, all kinds of social
what
studies.
What grades though?
10th. Well, Emmaus was 10 through 12 at the time. So I taught world history. I taught government, economics.
So we should
US
remind
history.
listeners and viewers out there that high school didn't actually used to be 9 through 12 everywhere.
Not in Emmaus.
Well,
right.
a lot of places. It
Yeah,
was 10,
no, a
10
lot
to
of
12.
places. Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Yeah.
So it was a different structure a little bit than what we're
and
familiar
then the
with
junior
now.
high was 7, 8, 9.
When you started to go back, when you were getting your education degree, did you know that you wanted to teach high school? Was that was always? It was never like, I'm going to be a first grade teacher.
No.
Okay.
I loved high school. I loved the content. I had a great time in high school. No, that was never.
Is it strange being a high school teacher at 23, 24 years old when they're?
Well, it's interesting now because when I see former students who are actually just a few years younger than me.
You think, wait a second,
now it's
you're
like,
calling me
wait
what?
a minute, right. You're only a few years younger
As
than
adults,
me. My
it doesn't
former
seem,
students
but
are 50, you know.
Right,
so.
right. But it was a huge gap then.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were those early days of teaching like? Were there lessons that you learned that you feel have kind of carried through for you?
Well, I think that, well, first of all, relationships with kids. That is the foundation of everything in schools. You have to have good relationships with kids for learning to take place. I learned that a lot of work, not that I didn't anticipate that, but the amount of time to go in to really plan lessons is amazingly consuming. And then, not every kid is excited about the lesson you prepared.
Right.
So you have to manage that sometimes too. So
when you're creating those first lessons, is your impression in your mind that it's this like, I don't know, Dead Poet Society moment, right, where you're up and everybody's enthralled with the lesson that you're teaching?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you
and
think it's going to be?
Yeah, and then somebody's annoyed. Somebody's annoying you, I should say. But
right.
No, but I mean, I had a great experience. Although I really went into teaching with the thought that I was going to be a principal.
Okay.
So I wasn't viewing it. I mean, I was open, but I wasn't viewing it as, this is what I'll do for the next 30, 35 years.
What is the main difference if people aren't familiar with being a teacher versus being an administrator or principal role? What do you need? What skills do you need, or what's the attraction to one versus the other?
Well, I think the attraction is being able to have a bigger impact across a whole school rather than just your classroom. So you can have more of an impact both on teachers and who you hire, on the programs that are offered, the way the school is run, the culture of the school. The responsibility difference is similar. You know, a teacher has an awesome responsibility of teaching the kids in their classroom. But I always give the example, mostly as a teacher, by and large, what you plan to do that day in class, you do. You know, you have a plan, you come in, you do it. And again, in high school, you're seeing people every 40 minutes or 90 minutes, depending on the period, on the length of the period. As a principal, it's not so much that way. Things happen, you're responding to whether people are getting ill or other issues in the building, could be facilities issues, whatever. Your day is much less predictable than a teacher. But that's also, you get to deal with lots of different things.
Yeah, and I would imagine it must be interesting to see, I guess you'd sort of say, behind the curtain of the educational system.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of the system you can influence, but there's a lot that you don't have a lot of control over.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
And it's at, you know, different levels. So at principal level, you're working within the school system you're in. So whatever the curriculum guidelines are, you're told what your budget is, and so forth. So it's kind of a, you know, middle management in an organization. I was fortunate. I was actually in small districts. So Bethlehem has 14,000 students. The district where I was a principal had 2,000. A couple districts where I was
so
principal.
I do want to ask you that you were teaching in Emmaus, and when you left?
Yeah,
what
went
was
to
the
Liberty.
Next move? Okay.
So my first administrative job was Liberty as an assistant principal. So that was my first touching base in Bethlehem, my first experience with Bethlehem. And I was there just a few years, and then I became principal at Palisades in Upper Bucks. And then I moved to Montgomery County, was at Springfield Township.
Okay.
So that's what, and I lived in Allentown all the time I taught, the time I was at Liberty, and the time I was at Palisades. For that was about a decade or a little more. And then I moved down to Springfield Township outside of Philadelphia, and where I was a principal then for about a decade or so.
Okay, and at what point when you are a principal do you think this concept of moving up to being a superintendent comes into play? Is that something that they kind of like pick you for, or is it something that you strive to be? How does that work?
Yeah, it could be a little bit of both.
Okay.
I wasn't sure. I really was not sure I wanted to be a superintendent because I loved being a high school principal. By the way, my older daughters went through when I was their principal, so again, that's the family thing.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. And did either of them go into teaching?
No.
Okay,
Interestingly,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
One's at Elle
And
Magazine.
what school was that? Elle Magazine.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she's a deputy editor of Elle.com, the online version.
Great.
And one's a social worker in Philly.
Amazing.
So they dealt with their dad as a principal
yeah,
too.
well, that's tough. All right.
And I didn't think so, but
What
you know,
high
they may
school
have
was that
schools.
at?
Springfield
Okay.
Township in Montgomery County.
Okay.
Yeah, right off of 309 before you
Now,
go
do
into
you think
Philly.
they would give you a different story? Was it
I
difficult?
think it was mostly okay.
Yeah.
The one story that I tell from that when it wasn't okay was when my oldest daughter, who was a senior, I was running out of a building to go to a meeting somewhere, and I ran out, my car wasn't there. She had cut class and took my car.
Oh my gosh.
I was not happy.
That is
I
amazing.
was like, get back here with my
I would
car.
love to be a fly on the wall at that dinner that night. Yeah.
So that was the worst thing she ever did, though. So
Right,
you know,
right.
that wasn't.
She learned her
that
lesson real
wasn't-
quickly.
That
That's
wasn't
pretty
bad.
funny.
Yeah, yeah. But I was not sure I wanted to be a superintendent. I love being a principal, and then my superintendent in Springfield Township asked if I would become assistant superintendent. So after some thought, I did do that.
And what's the biggest difference in that role? So you
I
described
did not. That role was not a great fit for me because I was, as a principal, I got to run my own building, and
Yeah.
I was fortunate in a small district to pretty much run
what
the
you
building.
wanted to do,
Right.
yeah.
We developed programs. We did things. We did creative things. And then as assistant superintendent, it's tough because you're in between. So you have working with the principals, and in a small district, wearing a lot of other hats too. I did HR and some other things. But, so you don't want to step on I was sensitive to stepping on principals' toes since I had been a principal for a long time, but you're also not the decision maker as a superintendent.
But probably an important stepping stone in the process.
Yes, but in my opinion, not totally necessary.
Well, you have an assistant superintendent, our friend Jack
Right.
Silva.
Who is the best,
He's
I
pretty
should
great.
add. Right.
He's pretty great. But what did that experience teach you now that you have an assistant superintendent?
So as soon as I became superintendent in Bethlehem, knew I was going to become superintendent, I had the opportunity, the assistant superintendent position was open. So I said, all right, I have to get the best curriculum person, the best educational programs person out there. So I made a few contacts with people in the Lehigh Valley, at Lehigh in education, said, who is that person? Jack Silva. That's what they, and I knew Jack because we both took courses at Lehigh, got our doctorates at Lehigh. So I called him up and I said, hey, do you want to meet for coffee? So we got together. He was in Souderton School District and he'd been there a long time as a curriculum person. And I pitched the idea of coming to Bethlehem, knowing we probably wouldn't pay as much as Souderton and there were some challenges. And the first thing I find out is he's from Bethlehem.
Oh my
I didn't
gosh,
even know that.
That's great.
And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, this might be easier than I thought.
This could work out
This
pretty
might
well.
This might be good. So that was it. Pitched it. It was an opportunity for him to come back to Bethlehem where he grew up. He went to Broccoli, he went to Liberty. And so we have a tremendous balance in our team because his real strength is that educational programming, curriculum, program development, professional development. That is his, you know, like he's a genius in that area. And that wasn't necessarily my biggest interest. I've developed programs and done that, but I was, you know, as a high school principal, it's more, you know, running things, setting the culture,
Yeah, a little
hiring,
maybe more the business development,
educational,
so to
yeah,
speak.
and more of the organizational leadership wider. And that's kind of where my skill set was. So that's why I think we're a perfect match. And I can trust him completely. You know, usually our conversations are really quick.
You
Boom,
know
boom,
each
we're on the
other
same.
and
Like
you
I'll have an
trust.
idea, I'll say, hey, da-da-da-da, he's got it. Sometimes he'll come to me and say, hey, assign me this task. Because there's something, I'm like, assigned.
I
And
love
then he'll
it.
go off
That's great.
and then he'll go off and do it. So it's a good balance.
What do you think has been the greatest life lesson you've learned that's been helpful in your role now as superintendent?
You know, ultimately, it comes down to the people. And, you know, in any role, some things you get done by direct ordering, but not that doesn't, you know, that's rare. So it's about relationships and working with people and getting them to come along with you. So I think that's the biggest lesson is you got to have the people with you and you have to build those relationships.
You know, as a superintendent and a principal, can you give me a moment that might have been defining for you or that was a strong influence over your career and the path that you took?
Yeah. Well, probably the most, I think easily the most powerful, impactful experience that I had was when I was a principal in Springfield Township. We actually, unfortunately, had a school shooting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh
we had a student come in with a semi-automatic weapon in his gym bag, went to class, came out of class, and in like an intersection in the school, took it out and fired it off mostly into like the ceiling and high into the wall with a packed hallway.
Wow.
Fortunately, he didn't want to hurt others because he certainly would have been able to. And I kind of heard people running, and I went out in the hallway. First I thought there was a fight. Then I saw kind of smoke and dust down the hallway, and it was in the science wing. So I thought, oh, maybe it must have been a fire.
Gone wrong, yeah.
Right. But I heard people saying something about a gun, and so then we called a lockdown immediately. It's amazing how quickly halls can empty out.
When it's a real...
People just disappeared. Yeah. Some kids went into rooms, some kids ran out of the building. And so I went down the hall, and then I saw the person standing there with the AK-47.
What goes through your head at that moment?
Literally, I knew I had a pretty good feeling that I didn't see anybody injured. It was nobody in the hallway except me and him and the smoke from the cinder block from when he shot the walls. I couldn't see who it was. So I turned and headed back to the office.
I mean, at this point, are you even aware it's a student? I mean, do you feel like it could be...
I didn't know, right?
Okay.
No, I didn't know. I couldn't see well enough. So I turned and I checked a couple doorknobs because your first instinct is to get out of the long hallway you're in.
Right, sure.
And they were locked, which they should have been because they were locked down. So then I just ran down the hallway back to the office to contact the police. And I'll always remember running down the hallway thinking, holy crap, I'm going to get shot in the back. And then made it back to the office. People were hunkered down in the office, called the police. People had already called the police, but I was on the line with them too. And then when the police arrived, within seconds, the police station was like across the street, and came in, and he had moved down the hallway. I also learned that eyewitness reports during a crisis are completely unreliable because the police were telling me on the phone, well, we got a report he's at this end of the building. I'm like, no, I can see him right now through my office window, you know. And then when he was confronted by the police, he took his own life. So then we had the horrible situation of someone shot to death in the school. So the kids are traumatized, families are traumatized. It really just, killed the community for the rest of that year, then fears of what could happen. But the other really delicate part of this was that half the community or more was angry that he did this and terrorized the school. And half were, and his family had lost a son to suicide. So there was like this split between people who felt badly and, sadly because it was a suicide, and half that felt, how dare he terrorize me. My daughter was in the hallway, one of my daughters. She witnessed the gun go off and then dove into a classroom with other students. So it's December 12th is the anniversary, so we just had it.
That's my
December
birthday.
12th. Oh, really?
Yeah.
And 2006. And so every year on December 12th, my daughter texts me, and she is still angry about that he did that.
That's got to be an unbelievably difficult situation to be in.
And then the fear afterwards, and what are we going to do about safety?
And how do you repair that? And how do you, as a principal, I mean, you've got to be.
Well, we had a good school culture. It was paying a lot of attention to giving people time to be supported, to talk it through. We closed for a day, then we opened for a half day where kids just came in and went through shortened schedule just so they were in each of their classrooms, saw each of their teachers, just to start to get. But the expert trauma people that we talked to said the sooner you get back into the routine, the better. So we got back into the routine, provided supports. We did things like inspect all backpacks that came into the school for a period of time. Then we did it randomly to try to create a sense of safety. So there was a variety of things we tried to do.
When something like that happens, what does it do to you and the way that you approach school safety? Now as a superintendent in Bethlehem, which is a pretty big school district.
The sixth largest in the
state of Pennsylvania, sixth largest, so really big school district. It is something on parents' minds. It's something we all think about.
And something we think about every day. So I guess when sometimes if I get a concern that we're not focused enough on it, I do remind people that of all people, I get it.
You've lived
I
through
lived
it, which is
and I had a child live through
it.
So I get it. But we have to be balanced, and we have to be, and we've talked with experts, there's a balance between you want to have physical security, lock doors and so forth, keep out intruders. But the fact of the matter is, like in my case in Springfield Township, the majority, first of all, school shootings are actually extremely rare when you look at it statistically.
It's like plane crashes.
It's like Dr. Langman is an expert on school shootings. He's in Allentown. He says it's like once in every 10,000 years, the chance of your school having a school shooting.
We forget how many schools there are.
Having said that,
it happens.
It happened to me, so I don't downplay that. But so they're rare, and the majority of the time they're done by someone who belongs there, which was the case in my case. So you could have the best, you're not letting outsiders in,
but
you're letting people who belong there in. So then it goes to you need to have positive school cultures, you need to have mental health supports, you need to have kids be willing to talk about concerns
Well, that
if
was
they're
going to be my
worried
next
about
question,
somebody.
and I think now, and you can certainly please let me know, but I think now we're seeing a huge shift culturally in the last few years to there being a much bigger focus
Yes.
on mental health,
Yes.
suicide prevention, drug use, and all the things that unfortunately tend to lead to things like
Yes.
school shootings. So the shooting was not really the issue. The issue was the mental illness that was left untreated.
Right. So that's a great. I mean, you're exactly right on that. And I was happy. The Governor Wolf had a task force, and they released a report earlier this school year. And I saw that shift in the recommendations in the report more towards the behavioral health, mental health, counseling, and less on the if we just put up an extra barrier, if we just put up another locked door. You want to have that.
Right, but it's more
But
than that.
that's
It's that
the
concept of
that's
preventative
not
medicine,
right.
preventative
And all of the other
schooling.
lockdowns, running away, fighting, all of that then the bad thing has happened.
Right.
The goal is to prevent it from
From
happening in
happening.
the first place. Yeah.
So now, how long have you been in this role in Bethlehem?
This is my 9th school year.
Okay,
It's a
wow,
long time.
coming up on
That's
a
a long
decade
life
here.
expectancy for a superintendent.
It
The
is.
average is 3 to 4 years in Pennsylvania.
And you, really?
Yes.
All right, so what's the secret to your longevity?
Good luck.
Good luck.
We have a great school board.
Mhm.
That's number one. Because what often happens is the school board that hires a superintendent, you have an election, and now there's a bunch of people that are not wed to that superintendent because they didn't hire them. I've been fortunate, though we have, I think, only 2 of our 9 were on the board when I was hired. They have all, we have a board that works well together, is focused on doing the right thing for the district. So that board superintendent relationship is critical. So we have that. We have a great team. My, what I call my executive cabinet, so our Dr. Silva we mentioned, Jack Silva, Chief Financial Officer, HR, Facilities, IT, all of those folks now have been with, first of all, I got to hire almost all of them over my first year, and we've all been together now.
So now you've
for that
developed a
8.5
nice team.
And we've had that stability. That's unusual to have the executive team in place now into
Mhm.
our 9th school year. So that kind of stability really helps.
Yeah, and you are an early adopter, I would say, of social media, of being
Mhm.
a superintendent or a school administrator that is on social media, and you have a really big following.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about where that came from and how that's kind of developed.
Yeah. So a few years ago now, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years, we wanted to get into social media. We decided not to start it. We didn't even have a district Facebook page. We've come a long way on social media in the last couple of years, so I thought, well, because Facebook, then you need someone to moderate it,
Right.
or else it's basically a website.
Right.
It's just one way. So I thought, well, I'll try Twitter. And Twitter was getting big at that time. So Jack Silva and I both started Twitter accounts. And my daughter, who's at L, was also, and her side of things is the media, the online social media side. So she coached me. So I created the account, and really it took off with bad weather.
Yeah.
I mean,
Everybody
that's where,
wants to know,
right,
is school
right.
closing?
So that's when the numbers. So originally in our office we joked that if I could get to 100, if I can get 100
Well, now
followers,
here's what I
that would
want
be
to know.
awesome.
Did you get on Twitter before that weird, wild storm and Halloween?
I did it. I started in June before that.
Oh, see? Now
That's what
that
it
had
was.
to be your superstar
That
moment,
was it.
right? You had
That was it.
we had that
Yep.
massive storm on Halloween.
That was it.
Unexpected.
Yep.
And you just shot to superstardom of Twitter.
And then with the kids' funny responses,
Right.
people love those. People watch for those.
Sure.
And then my daughter actually, when she was at Time Magazine, did a little story on my dad, the superintendent, in snow days. So that also picked up some things, some followers. And then Huffington Post picked up on at
It's
one
amazing.
point. So there was a piece
Can
in
you
Huffington
imagine
Post.
what would your dad think of all this?
Yeah, wow, yeah. It's a totally
it's a whole new level of
totally different world.
administration.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah,
That's great.
It's wonderful.
I have a couple things I want to
Okay.
talk to you about before we go, and then
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'd love to ask you a little bit about your family. You mentioned your 2 daughters.
Okay, sure.
but you have additional
Yeah,
kids.
yeah,
So tell me
thanks.
a little bit about that.
So I have my older daughters, who I mentioned, and then I kind of started over in life, was remarried, and have now 2 younger daughters, a daughter who's in 3rd grade and a daughter who's in 1st grade. They're both at Lincoln Elementary in the school district.
That's neat. So now you've got 2 more daughters going through the school system, and now you're their superintendent.
Yeah, you know what?
Now, do they know what that means?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They can't
Okay.
avoid it, because even teachers will ask, "Are we going to have a snow day?" You know, when weather is bad, and because it's a big district, and I think also because of social media. As superintendent, I am people know me so much more so than in the past without social media. Even at the high schools,
It's a great
the high
connector.
school, it's amazing to me that people know me. High school kids in particular feel that they know. I walk through the high schools. We have 2 huge high schools, and everybody knows me because of social media, and so they feel that connection, that there's no way I would have that connection without social media. So my daughters can't avoid it. The pressure on their teachers and on their school, when people realized where our house was when we moved here and bought the house,
Yeah.
said, "Oh no, that's in the Lincoln territory." There's pressure to have the superintendent's kids.
Yeah, I
And
bet.
fortunately, we have the best teachers, and they've had great teachers, and so my younger daughter, she had the same kindergarten teacher as my 3rd grader, and then the same 1st grade teacher. So they got used to having the superintendent's kids. So
Okay.
they're
All
good
right,
with
well, they're
it.
adjusting.
And so
What-
I sense a lot less anxiety
That's
at Lincoln
good.
now
That's
than there
good.
was
What's
originally.
the dynamic in your family having 2 grown daughters and 2
Yeah.
younger daughters?
Yeah. Well, I can go from conversations about career and boyfriends and apartments to, fighting over the crayons
Right.
in a space of seconds.
Yeah.
In fact, that is what happened. So that is my world. But it is great having the older girls are, completely obsessed and in love with the little ones. So that is great for my little girls.
I like that family dynamic. I'm from a family I have younger brothers and sisters who are 10, 12, and 15 years younger than
Yeah,
me.
okay,
And so
yeah.
now I have teenagers, and they're just having babies.
Yes.
And so there's this interesting dynamic
Yeah.
where the holes are all filled, so to
Yes,
speak.
yeah.
You're not quite there yet, but
No,
they will be.
but yep.
And it's neat.
Yeah,
it's
it
kind
is.
Of a cool
No, it's
thing.
really, it's neat. And again, with technology, they FaceTime with their older sisters almost every day.
I love that.
So they have
I love
that.
it. We're now
they have that
FaceTiming with the
connection.
new baby nieces and nephews.
Yeah, see, it's
FaceTime
FaceTime
kind of fun
lets
for the
you
kids.
stay connected.
You're very involved in the community. You are chairing the Greater Lehigh, United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley, which I'm a board member with you.
Yep.
And there's a lot of amazing things going on. Give us a snapshot of where education is headed, not just Bethlehem Area School District, but in general. Where do you think education is headed? People always have concerns, right? Every generation has their concern over something. I think right now it tends to be a lot around technology and social media.
Yeah.
We've got all this cool AI that's helping us,
Yes.
iPads in schools, and lots of good, and yet we're all battling against put the phone down, get
Yes.
your work done,
Yeah.
pick up a pencil.
So that is, I think the future is a rapid acceleration in the use of learning software, instructional software. So more and more we have what I'd call smart or adaptive software that matches the kid's level. So you're doing math problems, and if you're doing well on the concepts, it ratchets it up the problems or takes you to the next learning. If you're not, it will ratchet it down so you can review the skills you need. So that is a huge difference, because the challenge always for teachers was, how do you individualize and differentiate for a class of 25? Now, particularly in areas like math or literacy, software can help be very precise in saying this child needs this.
And they're ready for more, or
right.
they need help.
And the teachers, the data, your reports that you can get out are really helpful. So we can be much more personalized and individualized because of the software. What we want to balance, and we're having this is our hot internal conversation right now, is the balancing the screen time piece. In fact, we're developing a document, getting a lot of feedback from our teachers and parents on kind of a philosophical guidelines for screen time, because there's a lot of good things kids can do on computers in schools, but we don't want them in front of screens all day long.
It's a real challenge, and I have to say, as a parent, I like that everything they need is digital. It's at their fingertips, right? So there's no excuse. Study guide is there. The notes are there. But the challenge is, if I want to say take their phone away, I mean, it's really the lifeline to their schoolwork. And how do you ignore the Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter notifications while you're trying to study for any subject when it's all on your phone or your iPad? And I think we're kind of the first generation really going through this.
It's very different.
So nobody really knows, but I'm grateful to hear that that administrators and school teachers are all thinking about this. We may not have all the answers, but at least we're
it has to be a
mindful.
balance. And in the classroom, what we want to see is three things happening. One, so if I have 20 kids in a class, I can have a small group that the teacher's sitting around a table with doing direct instruction on. A group that could be collaborating on a group learning, and then a group that's on computers doing some individualized learning on the software, and then you kind of rotate through. I think that's the model for the future. Schools need to be the place where collaboration happens, or else what's our value added? You can get any knowledge that you want at home on the computer. So schools need to be, the value add needs to be that collaboration, the creative learning together piece. And so computers can help with that, but you need people to do that too.
Right, I love it. That's great. Well, Joe, it's been nice having
my
you here
pleasure.
today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Before I let you go, and you've given us so much insight, so many interesting things that have happened, I would like to give you a quick series of rapid-fire questions that I will get answered. I did not give these to you in advance.
No, you did not, which is why I'm a little anxious.
Yes, I know, but it'll be fine. It'll be
wringing
fine.
my hands.
If you could bring any three people to dinner with you, who would they be?
Holy cow. Well, I am fascinated with Abraham Lincoln. I would bring. See, I'm going to go all history. Abraham Lincoln, Nelson Mandela, and I'll say Kennedy, John Kennedy.
Fascinating people. It would be a good dinner party. I like that. If you could pick your favorite food or your last meal, what would it be?
I am right now very into Puerto Rican food, so rice and beans and pork, and pasillos.
Are you seeking out sort of the different places?
We have a few places, but the good thing is we have a lot of people in our office that bring it in. So
that's pretty lucky. That's better than a donut from down the street, right? That's amazing. All right, is there one place that you've been that was your favorite? What's the best place you've ever visited?
Wow. So one of my favorite places, and we were just there over Thanksgiving, is Jerome, Arizona. And it's a couple hours north of Phoenix in the mountains, about 5,000 feet altitude. It's an old copper mining town that's built on the side of a steep hill. It used to have 15,000 or 30,000 people. It now has 500.
Wow.
And it's kind of an artsy, a few restaurants, an artsy community.
I can picture it.
Yeah, like
a little out west.
Hippies moved there too in the 60s and 70s.
And what is it about that place you love?
We have relatives there, and we visited them, and the view across the Verde Valley is just spectacular from being up on the hillside. And it's just, to me, it's like you get away.
Yeah, you're really
Nobody
away from it all.
knows who I am.
So
the
you like
cell
to
reception
go there.
is spotty.
Perfect, they can't find you. What is one place you have never been that you would like to go?
Yeah, London. That's
London.
on my list.
I had never been to London until about a year and a half ago. And I have to say, it was fabulous. Can't wait to get back.
That is on my list.
Yeah, get there.
Yeah,
make sure you get
we
there.
will.
Last question for you. If you were not a school superintendent, principal, or teacher, what would you be?
Whew. That is a doozy. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe something involved in athletics, in an athletic department somewhere.
All right. So it means that you've really found your true calling. You're doing what you're meant to do.
Yeah, I can't
and what
imagine.
you want
There's nothing
to
else
do.
I want to do at this point.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Dr. Joseph
All
Roy, Bethlehem Area School District, thank you for being a guest. This has been Unscripted with Russo. Thanks for joining us.